Man, oh man, has it felt like it's been a month since we've been back on here. But no, it's only been a week. I've been all over the Eastern Seaboard at this point. Just kidding. I've been up from Georgia to South Carolina, back to North Carolina, into the old digs, Dan. But hey, we're back where it all started. Episode 64 of the Top podcast. I had to look up at the top left corner to figure out what episode we're on, Dan, because it's gotten to the point where I don't even remember
67.
what episode number this is. Yeah, 67, man. We're quickly approaching episode 40. Hey, or episode 100. Hey, maybe when we hit episode 100, Dan, maybe we'll be able to say Georgia were repeat national champions. But damn, before we get to that, we do know for a fact Georgia is the SEC champions. Man, what a game that was, and we're going to get to that here tonight. Dan, how are you doing on this lovely Tuesday evening?
Well, I don't have different houses to go to. Unfortunately, I'm old, as you guys like to joke, and I just go home, and that's where I am. I'm at home. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Georgia came out and put a absolute butt whooping on LSU in the SEC championship game, which was refreshing for everyone to see. So I am excited to be here and ready to start the show.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it, Dan. Hot topic of the night. We have two tonight. First one, Dan. Should either play call, guys, speaking about television, and I guess we can even do radio, but we're going to do TV because this is where it's most likely seen. Should either play-by-play guys or color commentators be allowed to be on-air personalities?
So, yeah, this is a big one for me, right? So, like, Kirk Herbstreit is on College Game Day, always has been. That's where he started, and then he later in his career was allowed to move on to be a on-air color commentator, which he's absolutely fantastic about. Now, what they do with him is they don't allow him to make picks. All right. Am I frozen or are you frozen? All right. I think you are. Or anyway, so they allow him to make picks, but he doesn't pick the game that he's on. So the reason I bring this up is because of Gary Daniels. Now, Gary Danielson is not a studio host or whatever, but you can go through timelines, you can go back, you can listen to videos, you can do whatever you want to. The guy, for whatever reason, whether he has a relationship there or he likes the team or whatever the case may be, maybe they treat him really well every time he's there, but he does have an affinity for Alabama, and it is obvious to everyone that listens, except for a handful of people who like to say it's not true, but it is. It's easily true. It's easily provable. He doesn't champion for any other team. Like, you're calling a Georgia LSU game, there's no reason to bring up Alabama. They're not in the football game. They're not playing. They didn't qualify for the game. There's no reason to bring them up other than say that LSU beat them. You don't need to mention them. The over-under was 10, and he went way over, speaking on Alabama, plus 10 times. It was obnoxious. It was silly. It was stupid. So, like, the point of that is, in a studio show, that's where that conversation belongs. And you can say whatever you want to in the studio show. You can be the biggest homer in the world in the studio show. It's fine. That is the atmosphere for that. However, when a person tunes in to watch an SEC championship game or any other game for that matter, whether I be watching Oregon and Stanford, if I'm watching that game, I expect to watch the Oregon-Stanford game. I want to learn things about Oregon and Stanford. I want to watch that game, enjoy that game. I don't want to hear about USC. I'm not watching a USC game. If I wanted to watch a USC game, I'd watch it. If I wanted to learn about them, I'd learn about them. But I don't. I think maybe I worded the question wrong when I sent it to you, Harrison. Is that if you're going to be a person who is presenting a game, you need to present the game, present the information for that game, the team, pertinent information. It is not the time to champion the cause of something else, and I think that's where my biggest issue is. And he's the one that spawned it, but there are plenty of other guys. Actually, you know what? That's not true. There really isn't a bunch of other guys. Kirk Herbstreit doesn't do that for the most part. Kirk Herbstreit is an Ohio State guy for the longest time. He went out of his way not to talk positively about Ohio State. So much so, he had to move away from Ohio because the people were threatening his family because he wouldn't, pimp out Ohio State on air. Okay. David Pollock, for the beginning of his career, did the same thing where he would distance himself from Georgia because he didn't want to be called a homer. It was very important for him to be taken seriously. Now that he's getting more comfortable in his career and he's established himself, I think it would be Absolutely silly to say that he's not good at his job. I think David Pollock is phenomenal at what he does. But he doesn't, but the point is, Harrison, the conversation about who does what or whatever in the case may be, that belongs on a studio show. If you're a broadcaster, you broadcast that game that you're calling. And that's not the time to be waving pom-poms for teams that are not involved in the show. I know I went way on that answer, but I was kind of hot about it.
Oh, absolutely. It could have easily been Dan's rant of the week. Dan did have a really good tweet. Dan, if you want to find that tweet and send the link to me, I will pull it up on my screen right now about the Gay Danielson, how things have never changed. Because, yes, I do agree. There was no reason to bring up Alabama over 10 times on a broadcast that Alabama's not even in the game. I don't even want, we don't even need to sit here and say, make a case for why Alabama should be in the playoff because they didn't belong in the playoffs. If 2019, 2018, I think it was 2018. 2018, Georgia didn't belong in the playoffs, and they didn't get in, so they didn't belong. In the case of what the committee said, then why does Alabama deserve to be in? It doesn't quite make sense here. It never made sense to me why Alabama was even in the conversation for the college football playoffs to begin with. So I just, that whole thing wasn't about the game. I don't care about what. No one cares what your thoughts are on Alabama, Gary. No one does. So I will give Gary the respect that he does deserve. Gary does do a really great job of calling games, and we are not where I need to be. I wanted to show Dan's Facebook because this is what I was referring to. Dan, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, guys. So for y'all listening on video, and I'm sorry to the people on podcast, Dan posted this. It was a post from Dan's Facebook 3 years ago, December 1st, 2019. Dan posted a meme, Gary Danielson explaining why a 2-loss Alabama team that didn't even win its division absolutely has to be a part of the playoff picture. It is the best time capsule that I've seen from Dan. It was I've never championed a tweet that Dan put out like this one before. This is Dan's best tweet, college football related. I loved it. It was great. A lot of people liked it, I hope, because, Dan, that was amazing. Great find. That's not the only Facebook find Dan has found before, because Dan does have some old takes on Jimbo that have resurfaced onto Twitter these days, thanks to Dan. So, great to see you here. Hey, if you're listening to us on podcast, guys, this is all the incentive to see Dan's beautiful face and to talk to Rudes here on video, guys. You can see Dan once a week. Once a week. You don't even have to meet him in person. You just see his face once a week. He has the facial hair growing back. Hey, maybe I grow some. Try.
I want to see you try that. I want to see you try to grow facial hair. That would be hilarious.
Hey, you're gonna think I have a rat atop my lip. So I don't know how long
you have dark hair. I don't know how you can't grow facial hair.
We'll see. It may not be my blood. Not many members in my family have facial hair, sadly. So it's not in my genes. But hot topic number 2. Dan, I don't know if I even answered that question. Maybe I just avoided it. But I think me and you have the same thought process behind it. It doesn't irk me as much as it does others, because I do think when you're talking about Georgia football in years past, it is fair to mention Alabama, because Alabama is a big part of that storyline that is Georgia football's rise to the national championship is, last year you have to beat Bama. So, if it's not a ball game and it's a blowout, why not look ahead to the biggest game on the schedule? Well, this year, that's not the case. Alabama was nowhere in sight, was not even on the same road. They were on I-20. Georgia was on I-75, just going completely opposite directions, going different ways. They weren't a part of Georgia's past, so there's no need to bring them up. I would have had no problem if they brought up Ohio State or Michigan, TCU, some of these other teams that Georgia's going to have to play or potentially play later in the year. Bring them up, because that's Georgia's roadblock at this point. So with that being said, Dan, hot topic question number 2. This is a good one, Dan. Dan comes up with some of the greatest hot topics. Dan comes up with most of these hot topics because this is his segment. This was his idea. This was his inspiration. And so I kind of punt to him. I don't have as much, I don't know why. Dan always finds these things, and he keeps them really well. And I do like how relevant they are week to week. So credit to Dan for the content creation right here. Dan, do you have a problem with the coach naming his son a starter, having never played? And this is very relevant to what's going on with Deion Sanders over at Colorado.
All right. So, yeah, this one is a big one because Deion shows up at Colorado, and in his introductory press conference, he said, where's Shador? And he's like, this is your quarterback. It's his son. He's the head coach. He's allowed to do whatever he wants to. But Do you have a problem with it? And I say yes. And so there is a backstory to all of this. The backstory was that his son was not being recruited, and he took the job at Jackson State. There was a lot of people who went out of their way to say that the reason he did that was that so his son could have a job, he have an opportunity to play college football. And then, when he goes to take the Colorado job, he takes his son with him and then just automatically makes him a starter. The issue is that he may be the best quarterback for that team. And the existing quarterback, I believe, and Harrison, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Colorado quarterback only threw for 1,200 yards the entire season and a ton of interceptions and not a lot of touchdowns and was terrible. Okay. So maybe he is, right? Maybe he is like way better. But I think if you're a coach, well, first of all, Deion can do whatever the hell he wants to, okay? Because Deion's going to make Colorado relevant. And Deion walked into the first meeting and told everybody to get in the portal because he's bringing people in. And like he needs room on this roster. So he told everybody to get on the portal because there's no room for them. He's like, I'm bringing my own baggage and it's Louis, is what he said. I'm bringing my own baggage and it's Louis. So I need y'all to go ahead and get in the portal so I can get a real team in here. He is not messing around. Like he says, I ain't hard to find. And he tells you the truth, and he does. My only issue with that is if his son is the best person for the job and he earns it, I have no problem at all with a guy playing his son. I've coached my son, and I'm very different than a lot of dads. I was extremely hard on my son, so much so where he did not really like me coaching him because I was so hard on him. I did not elevate him above other people. I never made it about. I mean, that's just the way I do things. Now, as a dad, I love my son, and I'm going to champion my son, and I'm going to give my son every opportunity to be successful. I mean, if I'm not the coach or whatever, I will do whatever for my son. But as a coach, your responsibility is to win and play the best people and develop and all that stuff. So, I think what Deion is doing is a dad. He's acting like a dad. He just got his son a better opportunity, not a coach. So that's where I have a problem with this particular issue is that his son hasn't competed for anything. Now, he did say, well, he'll have to earn it. Well, you said that after you named him the starting quarterback before he ever stepped foot on the campus. Who's to say he's even going to academically qualify to go to that school? Because Colorado, I don't know about their academic standards, but I mean, they said that the reason he waited 2 years was that Shedeur would have an associate's degree and everything transfers. Like you don't have to worry about stuff transferring or not transferring once you have an associate's degree. Everything up to that point automatically transfers. So, I mean, listen, people were calling this stuff out, Harrison, before it ever even happened. And it's happened exactly the way that they said, and that's why it's relevant today.
I appreciate Deion Sanders. Coach Prime, baby. Cowboys legend.
Yeah.
Falcons legend.
I love him as a coach.
Absolutely. I loved him. I wasn't alive, but I've seen highlights of him via YouTube. Sorry, Dan, make an age joke right here. But, Coach Prime, one of the best things that he's done is I found that YouTube channel where it's basically his documentary crew just documenting every single team he makes. It's going to bring unprecedented access into a program. Now, I know it's going to be all through the view of Coach Prime, because obviously he's going to have his guys saying, hey, don't include that, don't include that. So there's going to be a million things that get deleted. But hey, him walking into that team meeting and just saying, yeah, y'all are going to have to go ahead and hop out of here because I got some new guys coming is the biggest, as South Carolina players would say, drop your nuts thing of all time. Shout out to the South Carolina player that said that. That was a golden press conference quote right there after that, I believe it was a Tennessee win. So, yeah, Coach Prime, I don't have a problem with it, Dan, as long as the kid is qualified. As long as he's not being elevated over someone he should be elevated for. Now, I think the one thing Coach Prime's going to have a hard time doing is convincing other quarterbacks to go play there. Because, Dan, I think you brought it up either via text chain or on Twitter. It's going to be hard. It would be stupid for any other quarterback to go transfer to Colorado at this point because you're not going to compete for the job. You already have the cards stacked against you at some point. Now, this isn't something I should, this shouldn't be taken as a criticism of Coach Prime. Hey, maybe Shadir's that good, and he can start, at Colorado over most of the people that will be looking to go there. So we'll see. I am excited to see what he does with Colorado. I really do think it should be a success. I think it's going to be a success, and we'll see how long it takes for him to get another job somewhere else because, his goal, the best quote I've ever seen from him, and it's something people, very highly successful people will say, but, won't say out loud, but they think in their head. Coach Prime says, I've never chased a bag, but the bag chased me. And I was like, wow. Great quote there. And it's really, he says in his documentary, in his introductory press conference, it isn't about the money for him. It's about a greater cause. And if you want to find out why he's doing this, why he went into coaching, why he's going to Colorado, hats off to you, because it is honestly, he is doing something good for the sport. It's going to open up a lot of opportunities for a lot of other people in the sport. So I'm really excited to see how that goes there. Dan, rant of the week.
Before we get to the rant, the one thing I do really appreciate about Dion is that he doesn't bull spit, right? Just doesn't do it. And
come on, Dan, you could have dropped it. I said drop your nuts.
All right, he sat there in front of his team, and he said, "Listen," he goes, "There's only two ways you leave a job." He's like, "You either get fired or you take a new one." And he's like, it was time to take a new job, and I appreciate that. I mean, like, the kids want to hear the truth, and they don't want to hear some bull crap about this, that, or the other. Or, I mean, he sat there in front of him. He said, "A better job came along and I left. Sorry for your luck, but you guys have transfer." And the other part I really like is he told those kids in that room, he's like, "Don't y'all go run and jump in that transfer portal. Y'all aren't good enough for that. Like, you're here for a reason. You deserve to be here. You need to stay here. And if you enter that portal, you're going to get lost in that portal and never find a place to play." And I appreciate that level of honesty. Now, a lot of kids don't want to hear that. And my favorite part was one of the kids tweeted out that his mom tried to call him. He's a Colorado kid. His mom tried to call him, and he said, "Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm getting ready to go to the meeting with Dion. I'm so excited." He goes in the meeting, and then after the meeting, he texts his mom and says, "I'm done." She said, "How did it go?" He goes, "He told me to transfer." That's hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Right. But with that being said, Dan, you have a rant of the week. All I know from what Dan has told me, it's about the Heisman Trophy. Now, I have an idea of where this is going, but Dan, take it away, my friend.
I would love to know where you think this is going. Before I go, I just want to see how well you know me. Where is this going?
It's definitely going to be about qualifications, and it's definitely, I think your takeaway from here is the Heisman Trophy, the reasonings behind it, we've lost. The reasoning for the Heisman Trophy and the procedure on it has been lost because nobody's quite sure what we're looking for anymore in a Heisman Trophy winner.
So you're close. You're really, really close. Okay. My first part of the rant is the voting. Okay. It's people, if they break it down by regions, in different regions, you can see who votes for what or whatever. And that's fine. That's always going to be that way. A lot of times your Northern Midwestern people are going to vote for a Big Ten player. Your Southern person is going to vote for an SEC player. Your out West is going to vote for a Pac-10 player. That's never really going to change. Every once in a while you have a oh my gosh, I almost said transgender. you almost have a transformative, or I don't even know the word I was really going for.
I guess it's transformative.
Transcendent. Transcendent. You have a transcendent talent that everybody agrees on. But my first level of issue is the voting. Okay, people are casting their votes before the season is over, before the championship weekend, and I think those people who voted 2 weeks ago should have their votes taken away. And I'm sorry, you're not taking this shit seriously. You're done. Your vote is gone. You're not allowed to have it. First of all, I don't even know how people get votes. I know that like Buck Bellew has a vote. He didn't win a Heisman Trophy. I have no idea why Buck Bellew has a vote. Like, I'm not mad that Buck Bellew has a vote. I think he takes it seriously every single year. He talks about it and it sounds like he takes it seriously. And I appreciate the fact that he does. And he waits till the very last day. But I think they need to move the deadline for the voting to after the championship weekend. So like Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan, they moved their show to last night. They had a great show. They talked about new stats came out about who is the whatever after the SEC. Well, okay, that's fine. But the votes were cast before the games. So you're wrong. Love you, but you're wrong. because the votes were cast before championship weekend is based on the regular season, which is stupid. That doesn't make any sense, Harrison. I mean, what is the most important part of the season? Championships. But they're saying that it's not about team success; it's about individual success, which I've never agreed with to begin with. But whatever. So I think that the voting deadline should be moved back to after championship weekend, and I think those games really should matter. They really should matter. Caleb Williams, all right. So, all right, that's it. That's the first part of it is the voting deadline. I was about to go crazy. The second part is it's turned into a quarterback award, a stat award. Can't go. I don't know who that is, but okay. Love you, Zach, but I have no idea who that Nicole Arback is. So, the other part is it's turned into a quarterback award and a stat stuffing award. It's not the best player in college football. Because if you're going to tell me the Heisman Trophy is the best player in college football, then somebody like Jalen Carter 100% should be in the conversation, right? I mean, he should be in New York. I think it'd be very hard to argue that he's not the best player in college football or one of them. And I can prove it to you when he's either the first or second pick in the NFL draft. You're like, oh, well, no, oh, well, nothing. If he's not the best player, so if you're going to tell me this guy is the best player in college football, then he should be the number one pick, right? I mean, listen, I understand if it's a quarterback and the team who's picking first doesn't need a quarterback. I get that can happen. But, the Heisman Trophy winner should be a number one and number two pick because you just told me they are the best player in college football. But it's supposed to be best player. So I'm not a Michigan fan at all. But what about Blake Corum? How is he not in the mix? I mean, he had massive numbers. Now he got hurt. I got it. And Edwards stepped in and did a great job. You have some other running backs have some really, really good numbers. You have defensive players all over. Has there ever been a defensive only player to win the Heisman? The answer is no. You say, oh, Charles Woodson won it. Okay, well, Charles Woodson played offense and special teams, scored touchdowns. So, anyway, that is probably one of my biggest nitpicks is this is starting to turn into a stat stuffing or quarterback award. Now, Bijan Robinson had a really good year, but I think winning does matter. And my attitude about this year's Heisman Trophy really got turned around when on Twitter, and I don't remember who the original person to post it was. I know Jay Will and everybody else, they posted their version of it at one point. I don't know if they were the original one to do it, so I don't want to give them credit if they didn't do it. But it was basically, what did Stetson do and what did these other guys do in games that mattered? And games that actually mattered. And almost all of Stetson's stats came in games that mattered. Like in games that didn't matter, he didn't do anything. Like literally didn't do anything. So, Caleb Williams, dude, you had one job. Your one job was to beat Utah. You lost twice to Utah, right? Stroud, you played a one-game season. And you wet the bed against Michigan. You played terrible. You 100% affected that loss. Now, the one I do think has played his balls off, and I understand that, he had a one-game season too, and they lost to K-State, but it wasn't his fault, and that was Duggins or whatever his name is, Max Duggins, I believe. Dude, that guy balled out for TCU. Now, but whatever. The Heisman Trophy used to be such a special, special thing, and I really don't think it is. I started to feel this way when Ndamukong Suh did not win the Heisman Trophy. Ndamukong Suh was the most dominant player I've ever seen in college football, period. The end. And he didn't win. And then Ron Dane winning it over Joe Hamilton was a joke. And I don't know. There's just been so many different times where the best player didn't win it. So I don't know. Do you have an opinion, Harrison? Yes, there it is. That's it. That really kind of changed my perception. Now, listen, Caleb Williams did a good job right there, 12-2. Okay, and he passed for a little bit more yards. But look in the column that matters, in my opinion, is win-loss. And the argument that Stetson only wins because they have elite talent. So C.J. Stroud doesn't have elite talent at Ohio State. Is that what you're telling? I mean, are you telling me that they're trash? Well, I can argue that C.J. Stroud has more talent on his roster than Georgia has on theirs offensively. Hendon Hooker, dude, again, you had one job, beat Georgia, and you pissed the bed. Like, you had a poor performance against the one team where it mattered. So I don't know. I'm extremely frustrated with the Heisman, specifically the voting time period when these people vote, how they vote, and like take your job seriously. If you're not, give your vote back. I feel the same way with the Baseball Hall of Fame. Those guys are a freaking joke. Like, oh, I'm not going to vote for this person to be unanimous Hall of Fame because I don't think they deserve to be unanimous. It's like, dude, you're either in or you're out. And like Nolan Ryan should have been a unanimous. I mean, I don't know how you don't vote for him, but anyway, that's another story for another day. Harrison, help me out here. I lost. Oh, my voice is going.
I think obviously Dale Murphy should have been in the Hall of Fame this past week, but that it is where it is what it is. And Dan, I do agree with you. The Heisman has lost its focus. You know, it used to be everyone has told me ever since I started watching college football, the Heisman goes to the best player in college football. Well, I don't think it does a very good job of representing the best player in college football because there's no way you can tell me, like Dan said, Nate Hopkins, who wasn't the best player in college football when he was coming out, had that 20, I think it was had 20 plus sacks, 17 sacks. Same thing with the NFL's MVP race. You know, Dan. I mean, who's to say Aaron Donald shouldn't have won it a few years ago when he had that 22 sack season? You know, it's insane. It's insane that Lawrence Taylor didn't win more MVP trophies.
Well, don't they have an offensive and defensive MVP? I believe they do.
They do, but they also have like a league MVP, like a whole league MVP, which is crazy. They may have it for individual conferences, like offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year. I do think that's a thing, but yeah, it's lost
AFC,
focus.
NFC type thing. Yeah,
NFC, yeah. So it's definitely lost its focus. Now I'm seeing, you know, going around Twitter, and Georgia posted it today on Instagram, talking about we're looking for somebody with integrity that represents college football with integrity, class, and all this stuff. And you know, hey, if we're going by those qualifications, then Stetson Bennett fits right in there. Not to mention his play, like Dan said, in games that mean the most, he shows up. And for those that are going to go back and want to pull games from 2020 when, you know, he didn't play his best game against Alabama, everyone will tell you that. Nobody's going to deny that. They didn't play their best game. Georgia as a whole didn't play their best game in 2020. They still had a shot to win it, but it got out of hand pretty quickly. So, you know, Dan, when you look at 2021 to 2022 and you compare 2022 to 2020, there's improvement. But the Heisman Trophy, we're going off of this year. You know, I don't care about who won it last year. I don't care who won the national championship last year. I even don't care that Stetson Bennett was the national championship MVP. If we're looking at a Heisman Trophy winner for this single season from September to December, outside of that, nothing else matters.
Well, the other thing too is the biggest comment that keeps coming up is that he has a loaded team and they carry him, right? And so I talked to my stepdad on the phone today. He said, so you're trying to tell me that if any one of the other quarterbacks on your roster weren't under the controls that they wouldn't win a national title this year as well? He's like, because it's like whatever. And he's like, name another quarterback that couldn't do it. I'm like, well, I said, if you want to be brutally honest, and I'm not throwing shade, but JT Daniels, right? He didn't win. Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, Aaron Murray, Matthew Stafford. I mean, you say anybody could do it. Well, Georgia's always had talent. Georgia's never been a bottom of the basement team. Georgia's always had talent, and they had really talented quarterbacks. But for whatever reason, Stetson Bennett has been able to do it when nobody else could do it, and he has. I mean, Jacob Eason had the keys to this castle. He couldn't do it. Jake Fromm, 4 years had the keys, or 3 years had the keys to the castle, couldn't do it. DeJuan Mathis had a shot. He blew it. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of other guys.
You make a fair point, and everyone will say, yeah, but Stetson Bennett has more talent than all those guys you just listed. And it's hard to disagree because, you know, Stetson Bennett has come in a time where Kirby Smart has established himself, has established elite recruiting classes, has established their dominance in all this and that. And even Jake Fromm, to a point, you know, really didn't benefit from it like Georgia is reaping the rewards today. And that's not a shot against anybody. Not a shot against Stetson, not a shot against anybody on the team. But Stetson has executed at a really high rate, has showed up in ranked games against ranked opponents, you know, played really well. It went 7 for 7, Dan, on the last drive, Georgia's second to last offensive drive to take the lead on that Donnie Mitchell touchdown play, 7 for 7.
So the only thing I will say talent-wise is arguably the most talented team Georgia's ever had was under Jim Donnan. If you go look at the NFL Hall of Famers that were on that football team, and Jim Donnan made a comment that said, "This is the most loaded team in America, and if I can't win a national title with it, I deserve to be fired." And he was, because he didn't win. So I think
Bailey,
you have to
Richard
give
Seymour,
Marcus Stroud.
That team. Yeah, Marcus Stroud.
That had Hall of Famers on it. I mean, and you know what? Maybe Kirby's team ends up having Hall of Famers on it. I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But that team did. I mean, we've had time to look back on it. So Georgia has never had a shortage of talent. But I think it's a combination, though. I think Stetson is the right guy for the job at the right time, and I think Kirby just does an amazing job. And I really think Kirby and his entire staff, the way they work together, they collectively they put this thing together. I mean, I think you should give the Heisman Trophy to the freaking staff at UGA because they've been amazing. I mean, honestly, because Ohio State has, God Almighty, look at the talent Ohio State has.
It's going to be tough, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that matchup. We will get to that matchup.
I'm just saying, look at these other teams. They have amazing talent. Look at this Alabama team. Look at the amazing talent they have. Yeah, they have an amazing talent. Like we love Brooks, but go back and watch Brooks's pregame. He said Bama by 100. Is what he said. He said this is the greatest Bama team ever, and now they're pissed and they're going to blow through everybody. And I think we both would argue that Brooks is one of the smartest football people we know. I mean, I thought the same thing. I'm not throwing arrows. I'm just saying.
I think we all expected Alabama.
I think everybody did, but there's something missing. There's something wrong. And Kirby's done a great job of, not doing it. So, there you go.
Dan,
talent composite.
Yeah. Shout out 247 Sports. Credit to them for this. I know some people have problems with star ratings, but hey, it's a it's a good tool to judge who has the most talent and who recruits at a really high level, other than just looking at it from year to year. But look, Alabama's number one. Georgia's number 2. Ohio State's number 3. Texas A&M, Dan's favorite, number 4. Clemson 5. Texas 6. Oregon 7. LSU 8. And so on. That's interesting, Dan. How many playoff teams do we have in the top 10 here? We got 2. Only 2 teams in the top 10, talent-wise, this year, according to the Talent Composite, have made the playoffs. Michigan's at 13. Where's USC? Or not USC. Who am I missing, Dan? TCU. Yeah, I'm not even sure TCU's in the top 50.
Yeah, then you're gonna have to go a long way to find TCU.
So that's just a credit who's doing a really good job. Dan, I do want to get your takes because we have other awards to get to. Maybe we'll get to those in the weeks to come because, hey, we have, I believe it's now 25 days until Georgia and Ohio State meet in the semifinal game. But, hey, you're all here because Georgia won a damn SEC championship for the first time since 2017, the second SEC championship since Kirby Smart won it in 2017. He's second of his tenure, Dan. A lot of people I did see on social media, if you're not a Georgia fan or you weren't an LSU fan, heck, if you weren't even an SEC fan, people said, oh, well, why are we tuning into this game? Georgia's just going to blow their socks off. And, even if they don't, they'll get into the college football playoffs. And it just shows you. I would bet money that these are the same people that want college football playoff expansion, want a 12-team playoff, because, hey, they think the way to solve the Georgia, quote-unquote, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State dominance is to add more teams. Because apparently you can get upsets, Dan. You can get upsets when games matter most, when, in fact, I don't think that's the case. So we'll come to that later. We'll touch on that. But, Dan, I do want to talk to you about this game. We have quite a lot to touch on. This show may go over an hour unless my internet just craps itself. First, Dan, let's talk about it, Dan. Offensive explosion. I can't tell you how long my man Dan Kiley has been waiting for Georgia to lay the points. I've been waiting for it too because I know they can do it. Dan's known they can do it, and they finally did it, Dan. They did it, and I don't think they've ever executed. Well, I think Oregon, they probably executed a lot better. They probably played about the same level, but heck, Oregon, they didn't punt 7 straight drives. They scored them 7 straight drives. Georgia punted the first drive of the game. This game, they still put up 50 points because of it, Dan. Offensive explosion. First SEC East team to score 50 points in the SEC championship ever.
Well, the funny thing going in this game is that they kept talking about how in the SEC championship game, every time that Georgia plays LSU, it's never a close game. It's always a blowout one way or the other. And, it lived up to the billing. I mean, Georgia kind of blew them out, but, I've been listening to the radio. I've been listening to ESPN. I've been listening to everybody talk about it the last couple of days about what Georgia did. And they just, part of it is they're an extremely physical team, and they kind of took some of the physicality out of it to keep their players healthy and also to avoid somebody getting suspended. That was a comment that came up on ESPN a couple different times, is that they really felt like Georgia had, wanted to make sure that they had everybody available, because whether they won or they didn't, it didn't matter. But the offense needed to prove something, and everyone I've heard so far talk about this game really felt like Georgia felt like they had to prove something offensively, maybe not to anybody else, but to themselves. But again, for me personally, I've stayed away from Georgia in the heavy media, the heavy point spreads, because I don't like it when Georgia's a big favorite, because they don't play well a lot of the times, or they don't care to cover. I shouldn't say they don't play well. They don't care to cover. They don't care. But Kirby obviously did in this game. And I did say on our last show, and if you can find it, you can clip it, whatever, is that when Kirby has something to prove to somebody, Georgia is an extremely dangerous football team. And what did I tell you last week, Harrison? I said that Georgia had never Kirby had never beaten LSU, and he was out to prove something, and he did. And then the going for two, and everybody says, well, why did Kirby go for two? Because he couldn't go for three. He was ready to just run it down their throat. I think it was just hard to listen to people run their mouth, and he did. But defensively, I'm not as concerned, because we've never seen Georgia play like that before. And I think it's kind of the same thing when they lost to Alabama that one time, is they were just kind of like experimenting with things, just trying to keep it in front of them. And I don't know. I could care. I mean, I know I should care. And somebody tweeted out, oh, damn, this is that part of the game where Georgia doesn't give a shit for about 5 minutes and gives up a ton of points. And, I get it, but I really don't care. They gave up 549 yards. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 549 yards, as Dan said, and probably most of it came off the hands of Garrett Nussmeier, who is an absolute dude and is going to have a really, really bright future there in Baton Rouge. LSU didn't have scrubs at wide receiver. They had some really good talent. Keyshawn Butte, one of the best receivers in the country. It is great for college football that he's coming back for another year. It tells you, where that LSU program is at. He said it in his note, and I think everyone's going to say, if you're coming back to college football, you want to win a national championship, because that's the ultimate goal. It's like winning a Super Bowl, winning the Lombardi Trophy in the NFL. You want to win the big prize. And Keyshawn Butte thinks he has a chance to do it at the NFL or at LSU for another year, and he's going to improve his draft stock because he is a really good receiver. So we'll see, how that all progresses. I'm really excited to see how Georgia, goes into the playoff, because they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. Kirby Smart said it post game. He said it in the days after. They didn't play great defense, but their offense showed up. So that's just another chip. He always tries to find a way, despite how big or how small they win these games. It's, I already got to it's like a politician. I have to get my message and I have to get my narrative out there, because I have to start planning for the future, or what comes next. He's already planning for what comes next, and it's lighting a fire under his secondary and his entire defense not to give up 30 points. So we'll touch on Ohio State briefly today, because we have 25 days until Georgia plays Ohio State. So we're not gonna fumble the bag and go through everything here. But Dan, initial thoughts and reactions to Georgia drawing probably arguably the most talented team of the other three teams.
Out of any team that was going to qualify for the playoffs, the one team that gives me the most concern is Ohio State. And it's because, as we've talked about, Brooks has talked about, everybody has talked about, is that the way that you beat this Georgia football team is up the sidelines and outside and down the field. And Ohio State 100% has the ability to do that. I am a lot less concerned now that Jackson Smith and Jigba, your favorite player, is not going to play, because he's opting out. which is I have an opinion on that, and we'll save it for later. But my gut reaction was like, oh crap, because I really feel like they're the best team. But to be the best, you got to beat the best. And I just think it's one of those situations where I think the Final Four game is going to be a tougher game for us than the championship game, regardless of who wins the other side. I don't fear anything that Michigan does. Yes, I know they switched quarterbacks to J.J. McCarthy. I said that last year, that I thought that if J.J. McCarthy was their quarterback, that they would be better suited to beat us because he's more dynamic than Caden McNamara. Caden McNamara is now transferring to Iowa. That makes perfect sense
That's
for
a great
him.
fit.
Yeah, that is a great fit. Cade McNamara at Ohio or at Iowa. That is a fantastic marriage right there. But I don't fear Michigan, and I don't fear anything that TCU does. But I listen. Ohio State is legitimate talent. They are a team that recruits at the same level that you do. I believe we have an advantage at the coaching position. But my initial reaction was shit.
It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be like when Georgia played Oklahoma back in 2017. I don't know if it's going to be a shootout. I don't know if Georgia's going to give up 40 points. They haven't done it since that Oklahoma game, if I remember. Well, they haven't given up 45 points since the Oklahoma game. They've given up, I believe it was 42 to Alabama 2 times since then. I know they did in the SEC championship last year, and in 2020, I believe Georgia was right around that same point spread of 42 points. I believe they also gave up 42 points to Florida in 2020. So, Georgia's given up 40 points in certain points since Oklahoma, but they haven't given up 45. So I'm interested to see how these two match up on paper. Dan, I know you say, or people say Georgia matches up with every team in the country really well, and I agree to that. And you're going to call me crazy, Dan. You're going to call me crazy, and I think a lot of people will. But I think Georgia matches up really well this year, more than most defensively, with these spread offenses. With these run and gun, air raid, spread, whatever you want to call it, I think Georgia's more suited to play these type of teams, like in Ohio State, like in Alabama, than they have been in I don't know how long. The secondary, it was the strength for Georgia at points this season, but it's also been kind of the weakness at points where they've given up some explosive plays. But as our friend Brooks Austin did a film study on it on YouTube the other night, he showed the game plan really wasn't Georgia's regular game plan of, hey, we're going to play you press man coverage. We're going to make you beat us man to man. If you beat us man to man, props to you. You're going to get your yards and you're going to get some touchdowns. Like Dan said, they tried to keep everything in front of them. They played a lot of zone against LSU. And with zone becomes the potential of busted coverages because you're having to pass off, receivers to safeties from corners to safeties. And unless you're Malachi Starks or Chris Smith, two of the best safeties, I believe, when it comes to man-to-man coverage, it's not always going to work out. So Saturday was a case where Georgia got beat. They got beat sometimes. And, the one that everyone's talking about on social media is when Kelee Ringo passed off I forget what receiver was to LSU, to Malachi Starks. And as Kirby Smart said, post game, Malachi Starks made that play hundreds of times in practice. Dan's probably called his games, and he probably made that same play where he goes, basically just runs over to the sideline, picks that ball off, right on the sideline, picks that ball up before it's even caught or breaks that pass up. Just misjudged the ball, and the timing wasn't there this time. So, like Dan said, we're not really worried about some of the things that happen against LSU. It does show you that Georgia can get, passed over. So it's really going to be a question of what's the game plan, Dan? Because we saw last year against Alabama, they kind of ran a similar game plan, played a lot of zone, tried to keep everything in front, and it hurt them. But when they went to man, when they played their style of football, I know Alabama's going to talk about their injuries to their wide receivers, but hey, Jameson Williams had, I think, 40 yards on 4 catches before he got hurt.
Well,
take that as you will.
Yeah, if you know anything about Ohio State, you just got to get pressure on Marcus Stroud because he doesn't like to get hit. He does not. He's not a physical person. He's a finesse player, and he does not want to get hit. I mean, he doesn't like running and trying to get that. He doesn't fight for extra yards. He gets down, gets out of bounds. He's a very finesse player. If Georgia can get pressure with their front four, then it's over. It's over. But if Georgia has to involve a lot of people in the up front to get pressure on Stroud, and leave everybody on islands, it could be difficult because Marvin Harrison Jr. is amazing, and they've got 3 or 4 of them. I mean, that's the. I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, we have so much to talk about at this game. We have so much time. I don't want to give it all away. I don't want to give it away for free. I don't want to give it away today, but I mean, if you look at their wide receivers versus our wide receivers, it is comical. It's absolutely comical. Could you imagine the numbers that Stetson could put up if he had Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. running around? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Even some of their back. I mean, Dan, let's not forget.
Yeah, even their backups, for real.
Just 2 years ago, Jamison Williams was on that roster, for God's sake, behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Wasn't good enough to play there. But heck, when he went to Alabama, or he didn't play. I take that back. He wasn't getting the playing time he thought he deserved, and he proved himself. He was a first-round draft pick at Alabama, and he balled out. So like that just shows you that's credit to them. That's like Georgia's D-line a few years ago.
Because what Jamison Williams did is why Burton left. Because Burton saw what Jamison Williams did is he left a crowded wide receiver room. Alabama had made a promise to make him the focal point. He put up cartoon numbers, and he was a first-round draft pick, right? So Burton thought that he could go to Alabama, put up cartoon numbers, be a first-round draft pick. Didn't work out for him. But that is 100% the reason. I know people who have kids that are on Georgia's football team. That is 100% why he left. It's because he saw what Jamison Williams did at Alabama and thought he could put up cartoon numbers and go be a first-round draft pick. Didn't work out for him, but God bless him. I understand it. Makes sense.
Absolutely. And I do want to say, since we are talking about Jermaine Burton, please don't be one of those people that just trashes a kid. I don't care.
You can if you want to. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't.
Who cares?
It's not my.
Do it if you want to. I mean, you look silly when you do it, but do it if you want to.
Yeah. It's stupid. It's stupid to do it. I don't endorse it at all. Leave the kid alone. He's trying to go to the NFL and doing something that's he believes is best for his future. Just leave the guys alone. I mean, heck,
well, what I'm
like
saying
Dan
is you
get a new job, and everybody coming after Dan for going to a new job.
But
when it,
what I'm saying is like
that's it.
If you want to do it, go ahead. But you're making yourself look stupid because if you're an informed person, if you have any clue or you understand exactly why he did it. Like everybody at Georgia knew exactly why he did it because he wanted to be the next Jamison Williams. I just told you. I mean, he saw him put up cartoon numbers, propel himself into the first round. Burton felt like if he stayed here, he wasn't going to put up the same numbers. Had nothing to do with the talent at Georgia. He didn't say that Alabama's got better talent. It's just they're at a different offense. He thought that they would make him the focal point of it, and he'd put up the cartoon numbers. So if you want to make fun of the kid or talk shit about him for a good left, feel free to do it. But you look stupid by doing it because everybody in the country understood why he did it. Like we're not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but everybody understood. The understanding is there. You didn't hear Kirby come out and talk crap about him because the guy went and told Kirby exactly why he was leaving, and Kirby told him, go get it. Go get your payday. I hear you. Like, because Kirby didn't say, I'm going to change my offense and make you the focal point. He said, this is the team, this is the type of offense that we're going to play. If you want to go try to do it somewhere else, then God bless you. There was no vitriol. None. So I don't understand. You look stupid when you do it, so do it at your own peril.
And with that,
maybe that should have been my damn rant.
And with that, that's going to wrap up episode 67 of the Top Talk podcast. I got to find me a better chair. I don't like this chair. I miss my old chair at my new digs. This is very uncomfortable. I was on my knees.
You look like you shrunk 10 feet.
I know. It's very bad. I got to.
You were like way up here. Now you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's very, very bad. So I got to find a new desk. Dan, I love the hat you're rocking. The old G. That looks beautiful. Heck, it low-key reminds me of Gainesville's G a little bit. Dan, how about you shout out what you're doing this Friday?
Oh, man, it is going to be an awesome weekend. I have been calling high school football games for 13 years on the radio. This is the first time in 13 years that I will be broadcasting the state championship game. I will be doing Gainesville versus Langston Hughes. Yeah, that boy, Joe. Just keep up with your own team. Just worry about your own team. I mean, if they don't want to be here, we don't want them here, right, Joe? God bless you. If you can go get something else somewhere else, go do it because I love the guys that are committed to the big G on my hat. Those are the guys that I root for, and those are the guys that I want to support. And if they want to be here, that's great. But yes, I am broadcasting the Gainesville Langston Hughes State Championship game on Friday, and then on Saturday, my son's high school. My son is a freshman at Mill Creek High School, and we are playing for the state championship, the first time in our 19-year history as a school. Mill Creek is playing for their very first state title. Very, very excited. And there was a lot of pressure on these kids to start the year. It was championship or bust. This is the most talented team they've ever had. There was a lot of people that were really upset when we lost to Buford because we should have won that game, and we did not play well. And we were hoping that we would get another opportunity. Unfortunately, Buford let us down, and they did not win their game. So now we have to play Carrollton. But it's also really cool because we get to play the number one quarterback in the nation for 2026, which is Julian Lewis. And we get to he gets to prove to us whether he is the best quarterback, the best thing since sliced bread, or he's not. So we'll find out. And I'm super excited. It's going to be one hell of a weekend for me. I hope I just live through it all. I do. I like God, don't take me now. I just need a couple more days. Okay.
Hey, go check out Dan Colley's Twitter account. He has a really good clip. They posted it over on the WDUN. I believe it's WDUN. I forget what the total handle is, but they posted a clip of
Access
Dan
WDUN.
Great clip of Dan on the call. If you want to hear the juice that is behind Dan Kiley when he's calling a football game, great clip. I told Dan that alone deserves a state championship call. Guys, go support him. I will be listening on Friday night because I got nothing else to do, Dan. So
let me tell you this.
Tuned in.
Access WD on their Instagram, they took the clip that we had, the clip that you saw, and his name is Seth Chapman. I want to give him credit. Seth Chapman of Access WD. So the call was, Judge says that he reaches up, scores a touchdown. Well, we had this thing all year long where we said that Sky Niblett, he does two things. He catches first downs and touchdowns, right? So he went back, and so the clip is him catching the touchdown, and then it rewinds all the way back to the first game of the season, and they go back and play every first down and touchdown in the video. This is the most badass clip ever. Seth Chapman did an amazing job. So if you can go find that on Access WDUN's Instagram, it is freaking awesome.
Dan's really good at his job, guys. That's all I have to say. I called one game with Dan this year, and it was one of the best games of football I've seen all year, even though it wasn't really competitive. But heck, it made it even more special. I had more fun just being with Dan and watching the game because of it. So, guys, go support Dan. Dan does a really good job on those games. I look forward to hearing him on the call for state championship. Dan, you're getting there, man. You're getting there. You're making it to the big time, man. Hey, good luck. Woo-hoo! Safe travels, my friend. And guys, safe travels to you as we approach the holidays. Not going to say Merry Christmas just yet because we ain't there yet. But guys, Georgia, Ohio State, 25 days away from the next college football semifinal appearance for your Georgia Bulldogs. That's going to wrap it up today for episode 67 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. Gosh, almost an hour long. So we'll see you next week, next Tuesday, 7:30 here on the East Coast. See you next week.
Go Dogs!